use the graph of the function f of x to answer this question. Use infinite, negative infinite, or D and E where appropriate. Okay. Here we have a graph that is f of x, and here we have some exercises that we must find using the graph. Okay, for this, we need to first understand what is f of 0. What is f of x? F of x is talking about a point, a closed point for that x. So that means that it's asking for the y coordinate for the x that is given. Here is giving you the value of x. So f of what is the y value when x equals 0? That's what it's telling you, in other words. So if you look at the graph, what is the y value when x equals 0? We can say that is 0 according to that point in the graph, right? Now, let's move on to what is the y value when x equals 2? That's what it's asking here for B, right? So what do we have here is an asymptote at that x value. That means that we don't have a y value there because my graph will never touch the x equals 2. So that means that here the y value does not exist. Does not exist, or is undefined, right? So what is the y value when x is 3? That is what is saying C, right? What is the y value when x equals 3? So here is the 3. So what is the y value there? I can see that the point, the ordered pair that I have there, that point is 3, 0. So that means that the y is 0. Now let's move on to the limits now. Okay, so let's move on to the limits now. So the limit of f of x as x approaches -1. So if I try to approach the -1, what is happening here in my graph? If I approach from this side, I'm going to positive infinity in y, right? That's a y value. But if I approach from this other side here, I'm approaching negative infinity on y. So what is the limit of a function? Is the y value at that x. So since here, the y value that I'm approaching from one side is negative infinity, and the other value that I'm approaching from the other side is, sorry, this is positive infinity, and from the other side is negative infinity. So that means that the graph will never meet at that x value. So that means that the limit does not exist, right? If the one-sided limits are different, then the limit does not exist. So for E, the limit of f of x as x approaches 0. What it's telling you here is to look what is happening at x equals 0. If I can approach from both sides to the same y value, if I'm approach here to the 0, I'm approaching y0. If I go from this side, I'm also approaching 0. So if the two-sided limits are the same, then the y value that I'm approaching is the limit. Now, the one-sided limits. Remember, for one-sided limits, we have to approach from the side that is telling you the limit. So here it says f says the limit of f of x as x approaches to from the positives. So I have to approach from the positives here. That means that I have to approach from this side to the 2, to this value, right? So if I approach from this side of my graph will never touch the 2, but the closest y value that is going to be really, really, really close to 2 is going to be negative infinity. If I go down, down, down here, that would be negative infinite. We're talking about behavior here, guys. So if I have g, the limit of f of x as x approaches infinite. Well, this is new. Here what it's telling you is what is happening when x is getting really, really big, because we don't know what is infinite, but we know it's a big, big number, big positive number, right? So what it's telling you is what happens if I continue my graph this side. What is happening? My graph is going to touch the positive infinity y in x, right? But in y, what is happening? My graph will never go upper than 1, right? it will be really, really close to 1 because there I have an asymptote here. So it will be really, really close to 1, but it will never go upper than 1. It will never cross this pointed line. So that means that my limit will be the value that I'm approaching, that is the 1. Now, let's move on to the next exercise. So here we have what? Here, guys, we have another exercise that says, I want to analyze what is happening at this point and also at this other point, right? So the limit of f of x as x approaches 2. So what is happening in this exact value 2? If I approach from one side, I'm going to positive infinite, and if I approach from the other side to that x value, I'm also approaching infinite. So the limit should be positive infinite because my graph is going up and up and up. It's really going, it's increasing, right? So what is f of 2? F of 2 is asking you, what is the y value when x equals 2 on the graph? But since here we have an asymptote here, that means that my graph will never touch the 2, so there is no close point. That means that the point at x2 does not exist because 2 is not part of my graph. There is an asymptote, okay? So the limit of f of x as x approaches 4, okay? If I approach to 4 from the negatives, I will go really, really close to negative infinite. But if I approach from this other side, the value that I'm approaching in y is 10, right? So 10 is different from negative infinite. So if the y values are different, then the limit does not exist. And f of 4. Here is asking also about for a closed point. But here we don't have a closed point because here this part is an open point, so that is no y value. And if we look at the part here, we also do not have a closed point at that x value. So that means that the f of 4 does not exist. Okay, guys, so I think these two exercises should help you with the ones that had problems with exercise 24 from the limits review, right? So please, after you look at this video or after you watch this video, please correct your mistakes on exercise 24 and attach them to activity number 3. Bye, guys.